Advocacy and Policy Community of Practice on Home Visiting. We're excited about this webinar, so we're not going to waste any time jumping in. First, I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping. Everyone's been on Zoom for a few months now, so if you could just make sure that your line is muted, but please use the chat feature as freely as you like. Comments, questions can go in there. Feel free to use those reaction buttons as well. Keep us in the loop on what you're thinking. And then if you have any technical difficulties, you can chat me at any time. I'm going to send things over to Carol to give a brief intro before we dive into the speakers. Carol?
Great. Thanks, Anne, and welcome, everyone. I think many of you were with us earlier this summer when during a webinar, we had some very preliminary discussions about the role and really the potential of home visiting for contributing to equity at both the individual and community levels. And we're so pleased and honored today to have with us staff and parent leaders from the Early Childhood Investment Corporation in Michigan, who are going to help us continue that discussion by sharing their work and their thoughts on this important aspect of home visiting. So I'm not going to waste any time talking. I'm going to turn it right over to Bryn Fortune, who actually works with the wonderful panel that we're going to hear from today of parent leaders. So Bryn, you want to give us some background and facilitate our conversation?
Great. So welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to be here. Carol let you know that I am with the Early Childhood Investment Corporation, and we partner with our Michigan Home Visiting Initiative. We have the grant that oversees two of the infrastructure pieces that are a part of our systems building work for our home visiting system. One is that we oversee the development of what we call local leadership groups, and those within our 8 funded MCV communities and 3 of our rural communities. They are convenings where within the region or the community, all of the home visiting programs that are available in that area, along with the typical organizations you would expect, mental health, public health, education, along with the early childhood organizations that are a part of that community, come together in a governance structure. And part of what we did from the inception of our formula grant here in the state of Michigan was to require inside the contracts of those local leadership groups the participation of a minimum of 2 parents who had children under age 6 who had received home visiting services from either one of our evidence-based or promising practice models. As part of the infrastructure, the other component that we work with, so know that with those local leadership groups, we actually monitor and measure against active engagement of their entire membership. And we also actually track the engagement of the parent voice inside their meetings. So that's part of what we do to ensure that we know we have active parent participation and voice authentically engaged in these local tables. From its inception, one of the things we began to think about is for the parent leaders, so they're spread across our state. So they include all the regions, all the things you would expect to see, urban, suburban, and rural communities. And they are very, very diverse in terms of the parent leaders, representing a variety of cultures, representing a variety of backgrounds and different pieces that they experience, and therefore have the lived experience and expertise that was so important for us to have a voice at the table of how we were creating our system. They have the opportunity to be invited into a state parent leader group. We think of it as our own type of peer-to-peer network or a community of practice. So all the parents who have the opportunity to practice their leadership skills come together 6 times a year. It allows them the opportunity to do further skill development with their leadership. They have a chance to learn from each other about what is going well. They cross-pollinate ideas from one community to the next. And they also have the benefit of, as they're approaching challenges within the work they're doing as parent leaders locally, to really brainstorm and reflect with each other so that they can see some positive next steps and strategies. They have been given the opportunity to be, for instance, the opening keynote for our state home visiting conference that had an audience of about 600 to 700 home visitors from our state. They were so resoundingly highly evaluated that from that point forward, the state has always asked them to present at least 2 workshops at that conference that tend to be some of the most highly attended and definitely the highly evaluated workshops by our home visitors in our state. They are also a focus group that we work with at the state level when we're thinking about signing new contracts in our system. They're the group of voices that tell us where we're on and off track before we actually move that work forward in our state. So I say that to you because one of the newest layers that we've built into our parent leader group that has just emerged in our evolution this summer was to begin to think about the next layer of development, which was to have senior parent leaders. And that's actually families who have gone through this process, have been a part of those local leadership groups. They have gone on, their children are now age 7, for instance, from the group you're going to hear from today. And they have actually gone on to be active members of their local leadership groups, but in their roles, they have jobs inside their own early childhood systems locally. So with that, I want to just give you a sense, if you'll turn to the next slide. I wanted people to know that inside every organization in every state, this type of parent leaders, if given the opportunities and resources, they exist in all your states. And it's really easy. And oftentimes the kind of go-in thought is, oh, our families are so overwhelmed, they are dealing with crisis, and that we don't know how to invite them in to be a part of these kinds of processes. We have an interest, but we don't know how to do it. I wanted you to see the profile of our community of practice of these parent leaders I'm referencing. You can see at the bottom right, it is the representation of the different models that the parents from our learning community come from. And you can also see across the board, one of the things that families have an opportunity to do is to fill out a form voluntarily that they submit to me. I am the only person, I get the privilege of facilitating this group. I am the only person who actually sees what different lived experiences they have in terms of what we often assess in our home visiting systems. And they have, because often I'm reached out to say, we're working on this initiative. Do you have a parent leader who would be willing to join us? And that gives me permission to reach out to them to see if they're interested in doing that work. But you can see the level of how many of the families had experienced maternal depression, intimate partner violence, substance abuse, a relative with substance abuse, developmental delays, or children with special health needs. So I want you to know that today, the core of the presentation that is from our parent leaders, our senior parent leaders who are now mentors. Their children are age 7. They happen to have all boys. And they really have had the opportunity to go through this process that is available in Michigan, and really this system that we have made a commitment to invest in so that we can learn from the richness of their experiences. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. But I wanted you to see that slide because I want you to recognize how much this is really just a profile of families who receive home visiting services. They exist inside your states, in your organization, in your communities. And if the infrastructure is in place, you too will have the benefit of getting to, get invited into webinars such as what Start Early has provided in terms of advocacy and policy. So I want to introduce them in my own unique way because I, of course, have had the benefit of knowing these presenters for a minimum of 5 years, a little more for some of them. And I wanted to bring a twist to what I think is unique about each of them as individuals in their leadership. And I'm going to start and work backwards because Sarah's our next presenter, so I'm going to do her last on purpose. So Effie, and you can see her, you will be hearing from her later in the presentation. One of the most unique strengths and gifts that is a natural talent of Effie's is whenever she enters a room, she is one of those people you meet and you say, there is no such thing as this woman knowing a stranger. She is highly engaging. She is very charismatic by the nature of her personality. And a few years back, we had always had our senior parent leaders who had been with us for a few years. be leads in our small work group. And she was leading a small work group, and some tension occurred within her work group. And I obviously can't track 6 or 7 work groups at the same time. So as I was commuting home from that particular peer-to-peer network day, she called me and said, we had an incident in my group that I was
doesn't look that great.
we had an incident in our group that I think you need to be aware of. And one of the parent leaders had said some things that created a certain level of tension. And so Effie was communicating the story to me. And it was spoken in a language and in phrasing in a vernacular that frankly did not have much meaning to me. Well, Effie will tell you that her heart is from a person in Detroit, even though that's not where she lives right now. So she had a complete understanding that what had occurred is one person had actually threatened her. And of course, that is not going to be a reasonable container for a learning community. So we were able to really cleanly and clearly deal with that situation. But most important is the really patience that Effie had with me not having any sense of this inner city culture and some of these phrasing, and just kindly walking me through and helping me understand the dynamics of what have occurred and really doing the translating for me. So that's one of the unique experiences I've had with Effie. The next person that I'm going to introduce is Monica Gaines. And Monica actually entered our learning community initially with her husband, and she had a son who was a baby at the time. And in the course of the next few years, through the death of her sister, and because her husband's father was incarcerated and he still had siblings that were being raised, Monica went from a person parenting 1 child to a person parenting 10 children in the course of just a few years. So we all think about the pivots and change that COVID has brought about. Well, you can well imagine the pivot and change Monica has experienced. And what thing that is so unique about her, that I'm sure why that transition went so beautifully, is she is someone who has a very natural, calm presence. She does not get thrown off or overwhelmed by things. She just keeps moving on and knowing how to accommodate change. And then the last parent leader I'm going to present is Sarah Zybert. So I had the opportunity a number of years ago, we had some excess funding inside the work we do, and we offered scholarships to our state home visiting conference. And Sarah applied for that, and she had a very young man that she was parenting at the time. And when I had a chance to meet her at the conference, while she had this very quiet presence initially, it was really obvious in her interactions that she was someone who was a very natural advocate, and the way she thought of things, and the gentle way she knew how to express an opposing view. And so it became really obvious what a very natural leader she was going to be inside her own community. So with that, I am actually going to turn it over to Sarah, because you can well imagine that the core of what you're going to get to hear is from the parent leaders and their expertise themselves on this topic. So with that, I'm so pleased that you get a chance to get the same opportunity we have in the state of Michigan to really learn from some of our parent leaders. Thank you.
Hello there. So to kick off my section, I'm going to invite you to participate in a poll, because we're talking today about engagement. And if I've learned anything in the last 7 months, it's that engagement virtually looks really different. So if you could join me and just take a couple seconds, read through this, and no answer is a wrong answer. We just want to see what you're going to say here. Okay, so I really want to commend you, because in under a minute, you showed a high amount of engagement in this poll. And we can go ahead and advance the slide also. So I see that most of you felt like parent engagement is parents as thought partners and change agents, with a high number feeling like playgroups and parent-child activities are really valuable. And I would tell you that every single one of these options is a really important engagement opportunity. So I'm Sarah, and I am so very grateful to be here with all of you today. I am struggling, like I think we probably all are right now. So I want to acknowledge this difficult time in the context of my fortune to have a community of other parents with the other women that you're going to hear from today, who are supporting and uplifting me. So back when I met Bryn at that home visiting conference in Dearborn, I would not have told you that presenting filled my cup. I wouldn't have even had language like that. I would have told you, yep, I'm really overwhelmed. I have a baby. And now I have some more language to really be able to convey to you both my overwhelm and that I'm in community with you feeling the overwhelm of this moment, and my gratitude for opportunities to share with you some things that we really feel like you need to hear. So this is my little boy, Finley, and myself. I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, even though I currently live in Flint. And I moved to the Flint area and then rapidly found out that I was unexpectedly pregnant with Finn. So I was far away from family. I was newly qualified for Medicaid. And I felt really lost and like I had no support. And that is the time in my life that I found home visiting. And home visiting has shaped every part of who I have become since then. And so, one of the things that is very important to me is to give back into the system that has meant so much to me. So, please go ahead and advance the slide. So, I want to talk with you about advocating for parents because I feel like, as a parent leader from Michigan, specifically from a city in Michigan that has recently been through a lot of adversity with the Flint water crisis in 2014 and ongoing, that parents are powerful advocates with and for other parents. And so having opportunities to share our voice and uplift our stories is really vital to creating successful programs and systems, and is also an opportunity to increase equity. Because the parents, like myself, who receive the services that you all provide are the parents who are the future of the programs. Our children are the future of this country. And so what better place to start from than home visiting? And so in Michigan, as Bryn talked about in her opening, we've had this really unique and special opportunity for development of our skills as parent advocates. And to look at it now, it could be easy to miss all of the pieces that have gone into the success of this ongoing work. And so I'm really thankful and fortunate to be part of now sharing the intricacies of this story and why this is working in Michigan and why this can work for you. So one thing I really want to emphasize here and call out specifically is Monica, Effie, and myself don't represent all parents, right? We represent parents from Michigan with 7-year-olds who we all happen to have sons. But I am not here to speak today, those of you from Texas or Pennsylvania or Georgia. I can't speak for your parents. We have things in common. Obviously, we have children. But to take what I, Sarah, am saying about parenting and just apply it across the board isn't going to do you any favors and is ultimately going to end up being a little exploitive of my experience, which is very personal. So My encouragement to you is that as you develop parent leaders, you have an opportunity to recognize our individual strengths and gifts. Please go ahead and advance the slide. So this is a piece I want to take a moment and talk about. And it's maybe a topic that I haven't always been sure how to articulate, because of course we're in home visiting, so empowerment should be what we're always striving for. But I think that there can be a gray area between empowerment and exploitation. And I want to talk specifically about situations like this, where parents come and share their story or their experience, share about what home visiting means to them, share about how it has positively improved their lives. And I think that doing things like this is really critical and important. And doing it the right way helps make sure that it's empowering. So today is empowering for me because I'm getting something out of this. I am having my cup filled by getting to share with you and knowing that this can result in you making vast improvements that are going to influence other parents in our country. Hopefully, you are also getting something from hearing from me, because today Monica and Effie and I have ideas to share with you that really will hopefully challenge the way that you've thought about how parent leaders can be involved with this work. That was a timer that I set for myself not to talk too long, so doing great. If you would advance the slide for me, please. So for parents to be authentic partners and thought leaders, there needs to be a really high level of respect and communication. So in preparation for today, it was communicated with me what was being looked for. I had opportunities to practice what I was going to be talking about, and I got to work with other parent leaders who formed a community of support for me. And so it's a really micro example, but on a macro level, for the past 7 years in Michigan, these are the kind of things that have gone into empowering me as a parent leader. So my voice as a parent isn't being exploited because I am gaining from this relationship that I have. So when I'm being invested in, I am now a leader, and that doesn't go away when I go off this Zoom screen. In fact, I go to meetings in my community and advocate and uplift other parents. And because this has been so meaningful for me, I actually recruit other parent leaders and empower them. And so in this way, investing in me is investing in this big, long lasting change. And so that's what we want to encourage you to do. And so to talk more with you about this, I'm really pleased to transition over to Monica. Monica, as you heard, is this beautiful human being who is so strong and wonderful. And I got the opportunity starting a couple years ago to work more closely with Monica because I just saw something really special in her, and I knew that I wanted to be more like her. And one of the benefits, as you all know, of a community of practice is that you get to learn from other people. And I knew that Monica was a woman who I wanted to learn from and with. And so I'm so excited for her to share with you what she knows.
Thank you, Sarah. We're not going to make me cry today. Thank you. But thank you guys, both Brent and Sarah, for those beautiful introductions. Some of what Sarah just shared in her discussion will probably challenge some of your current policies. So a little bit about myself. I was approached on a very hot day with a cold bottle of water. That's how I entered into home visiting. It's a joke, but no, it really is how I got into home visiting. My home visitor approached me on a very hot July day with a cold bottle of water, and that relationship that we built has blossomed into so much more. Baby, well, I'm not really the baby anymore because my parents kept having kids, but we were the babies for a long time, so I didn't actually know how to take care of a baby. And the support that I received from my home visitor actually helped me to learn how to change a diaper and not to feel weird that I was 23 and never had actually changed anyone else's diaper. I started with a really cool job, and I was probably just right out of high school, not out of high school, out of college. And I had this awesome plan that even though I was pregnant, I was going to rush straight into the workforce. The day he was born, I actually quit my job, even though it was my favorite thing to do. But I knew I couldn't leave Nate. But my home visitor really pushed me to continue to focus on my own goals so that I didn't get lost in being a mom. So I actually, a couple months after I graduated from Healthy Families America, I actually graduated with a double master's in finance as well. Next slide, please. So parents driving change. So like I stated, I was in Healthy Families America. I actually now work as a program assistant for Healthy Families America. And that's the main part of that comes from my supervisor. She really saw something in me. And when this position opened up, she called me personally and said, Monica, this is just something I feel like you should do. I had already been representing Healthy Families on our advisory boards and of course, as a parent leader with the state team, and I joined the program. So when other things come up that require additional training. So recently, Michigan became a multi-site system and an opportunity came up for one person. This is a shout out to Cynthia and Trisha, for one person from each of the programs to be peer review trained. My supervisor looked at me and said, I think it's you, it's not me. And I said, what do you mean? She was like, I think you're the one who's supposed to be peer review trained and not me. So I called Cynthia and had the conversation about, well, Monica's not our program manager or our supervisor, but it's her. She's the one who's supposed to be trained. So they had a conversation. It went to a national level, and I'm actually one who did receive that training for peer review. A peer reviewer is actually someone who's able to go out and do accreditation site visits and review other sites. That kind of encouragement, empowerment, and enliftment of a former is not normally heard of. So I really give props to Cynthia and to Elaine, my supervisor, and Trisha, everyone for really seeing in me more than what they see and pushing the button a bit. Next slide. So parent leadership as the answer. Let's be clear, parents and everyone are experts in something. Parents just happen to be experts in what's happening to them. So for me, being African-American and from Metro Detroit, I can tell something that prevented me from a parent level versus what happened from a systems level. And that different insight allows our program to see things just a little bit differently and able to create policies and things to help our families and our parents to be able to get more out of the service. On a broader state level, for our state parent leaders, we were asked to, attend a focus group when Michigan decided to pay a communications firm to put the messaging out about home visiting and to get more people into home visiting. During this focus group, our parent leaders just made simple suggestions that opened the eyes of a lot of people. The communications firm really wanted to just put the messaging on the outside of the buses, but the parent leader said, well, it would probably work better if you put it on the inside of the bus, because then the parents would have more time to read the message. And plus, in many of our areas, transportation is an issue. So many of our parents are riding the bus. So it just makes more sense. And also to put it in pediatrician's office, like on flyers or brochures. And we said, well, what about those little videos that play in the corner? That would catch a parent's attention more than another flyer when we're chasing around toddlers or trying to pay attention to all of the other paperwork that we're filling out. So those little suggestions really opened up this communication. Focus groups are a great way to get the attention and the input from parents, but that's not where it should end. And it'll lead into what Sarah discussed about being exploitive, because if the parents don't know what you gained, where it's going, it could get into that gray area that Sarah talked about. So when it comes to some of the policies I helped change for my Healthy Families program, like our first home visit really being focused on the relationship and trust building and not bringing all of the necessary paperwork that needs to go out. And also with early intervention. We normally would only talk to early on if there was a family that was in need of services. Now we have it in policy that we actually once a month talk to an early on person just to make sure that we're on the right page with helping with ASQs and those types of things. And then if there is a family, having that direct relationship with early on so that everyone can be on the same page with activities. I personally have a son with special needs, so that relationship was important to me. I may have pushed it on my home visitor when I was in the program, but they kind of wholeheartedly got it once I became a part of the staff. So when it comes to, I'm sorry, my very loud 7-year-old, if you can hear, I'm sorry. There's intentional change that needs to happen. So saying that you'll do something is totally different than creating a policy to hold yourself accountable. So there's 5 stages of intentional change. Stage 1 is like a future vision. So what do you see in the future as your vision for your program? Stage 2 is your current reality. Where are you at in regards to where you want to be? Stage 3 is the gap in plan. So where are the gaps in your current reality and where you want to go in the future? And then create a plan. Stage 4 is experiments. Now I say experiments because not everything's going to work out the first time you do it. It's just not. You're going to hit roadblocks and have to make changes. And like Sarah said, what works for your program and your parents may not work for my program and my parents. And stage 5 is support. Reach out to support. Sarah, Effie, myself, we're always welcome to talk, but also reach out to your own parents or to other programs who have implemented different parent leadership styles. Some policies that we think everyone should look into is like your hiring practices. So culturally diverse workforces, helping to match and mirror your population that's being served, and looking more into lived experience versus just education, and really looking into building a parent. So like I said, yes, I received my master's degree. They're in finance. They're not in early childhood. So my program definitely looked at my lived experience a little bit more than my work experience and my education. And it's been working out marvelously, I think. But, that's just my own personal opinion. I think a vital conversation is also needed to expand the conversation and access to parent home visitor partnerships so that it reaches a wider number of children and families that are impacted by racial inequality. My favorite quote that I heard not too long ago at a presentation was, "We were all children once before, but not all children make it to adults. So we must take the steps to reduce the stress of families in all areas." So the people on the front lines are the most important in the aid of children. Home visiting is on the front line. And that's because we're in the homes and in front of family. Next, to discuss all of this a little further is, like Brent said, our natural charismatic closer, Effie. She's a former parent leader from Ingham County by way of Wayne County. I'm from Wayne, so I always like to shout that part out. She's a wife and a mom. And her time in home visiting was really marked with some great growth that she now helps the system as the Ingham County Local Leadership Coordinator. Take it away, Effie.
Monica, thank you so much. That was amazing. Yes, as she said, I am a Detroit girl, but I'm living in a Lansing world. We're making it work. And now it's my turn to share with you guys some really quick things on steps to invest in parent leadership, identifying and supporting those leadership skills, and also sustaining that financial investment and continuing to develop those skills in parents. So really excited to share with you guys today. So basically, I got pregnant, right? 7 years ago. I found myself on the couch after a job ending. I was a domestic violence victim advocate. I was a legal advocate, and it was a grant-funded position in Grants End. You guys know this better than anyone. And so what happened was I decided I needed to get off the couch and do something with myself until I had this baby in my arms. So I went down to the health department, to get a background check. Here in Michigan, it's called the Central Registry Clearance. So I went to go get one of those and I saw a sign. I saw the sign. And it was a sign for the home visiting program that I ended up being in that really completely changed my life. It was everything I needed at the time and so much more, because I didn't realize I was dealing with maternal depression. You hear a lot about postpartum. I had never really heard about perinatal mood disorders in the way that I had experienced it. And so my home visiting program made all of the difference in my life. So I'm going to talk to you real quick about steps to investing in parent leadership, because that's how I got here today. So the good news for this is you can actually relax and listen to me a little bit. I have a cheat sheet that we can offer you guys at the end. So you don't really have to worry too much about the things that I'm sharing, about taking notes at least, because it's called Stepping Up and Speaking Out. And we will get that to you if you are interested in learning more about the things that we've done here in Michigan about investing in parent leadership. But one of the first things you're gonna do is you're gonna really have to have a heart check to get brave, and you're gonna have to get bold. Race equity work always requires that, right? It's no different in this space. So you're gonna have to get brave and bold, and you're gonna have to reframe your mindset. You wanna learn to use parent voices to inform the work that you're doing, and you wanna inspire parents to collaborate in decision-making at the systems level. This is so important. Parents now become leads in the field. If you hear what Monica just said, she went from having a home visitor to working for the Healthy Families America program. That is major, that is pivotal. And her finance degree didn't prepare her for that. Her lived experience did. And now she can identify with other families and parents who have gone through the program and kind of matriculated through the system. So you want to ask questions about your current system to determine how it can be maximized. And if lack thereof, if there is no system, you want to figure out how this can be changed. So for instance, what could it be like imagine what it could be like to combine individual program resources to enhance the supports that you can give parents. Are there limits? Are there barriers to this? If advocacy and policy work for individual programs have been working great, that's awesome. 3 cheers to my particular program and the advocacy and policy work that they've done. Hey, Amanda, I see you. But would you potentially have more power if you guys joined your resources together and pooled your resources, joined forces, and made something bigger for parents? So just think about that for a little bit. And this is not, we're going to just put together a couple of trainings for folks. When you think of the word investment, this means that you're in it for the long haul, and you're going to get the most return on that investment when you leave it and you go forward for a while, right? It's not a couple of trainings and Zoom meetings, or when we're back in person, we're going to, teach you guys a few things. No, we're in it for the long haul. So we're doing things to invest in parents so that they can change the system in the future. So next slide, please. Actually, I should have said next slide a while ago. I'm so sorry. So that was that slide. So now next slide again. Thank you. So we're going to talk about identifying and supporting leadership skills. So parents have to be identified and recruited and given opportunities to come together to create, kind of like what me, Sarah, and Monica are doing here. So how do you do that? You tap those who have direct access to parents. That would be our home visitors. So my home visitor recognized that I had a skill set, and she really pushed me. She really prompted me. I am not playing, y'all. I was depressed on the couch, and she was like, no, you have gifts, you have talents that you can share, and you have a track record for taking things and making them better. Let's go. And that made all the difference, right? And so neither one of us knew that, one day, sometime in the future, after I had that little baby, I was 7, and doing virtual learning, neither one of us knew that one day she would be sitting in the audience crying as I'm speaking in front of a crowd of people at the annual home visiting conference that we have in Michigan, right? There was no way for her to know that. And there was no way for me to know that either. But she noticed skills and she identified those, and she connected me to people who could support me in the development of those skills. So it could look similar to what you see here with me, Sarah, and Monica. All 3 of us are very cool. We're at least cute and talented, in my opinion, right? But in your community, it might look vastly different. So the parents and the agencies have the pulse on what's going on in your community. They're the ones who know. They're the ones who know what's going on down in the ground in terms of race equity work. They know what's happening in the inner cities. They know what's happening in the suburbs. They have the pulse on what's going on in the community. So you can't take what it looks like for us here in Michigan and translate that. And I believe Sarah gave you a little peek as to what that could look like. Then it becomes being exploitative, right? You don't want to do that. So you definitely want to connect with people locally, and you want to be watching constantly so that you can have the opportunity to level the playing field for equity. You want to be watching for families that you can bring into the arenas of decision making, because they need to be present where decisions about them are being made. So you want to also invest in opportunities for learning for parents, and you want to make sure it's about issues they actually care about. So it has to relate to their real lives. It cannot be just things that are fluff and researched in books. It goes back to what Monica is saying about lived experiences. You want to have the pulse on what's going on in their real lives so that you can tailor opportunities so that it benefits them. You want to strengthen ongoing engagement amongst parents that you bring together as leaders. It creates synergy, and that synergy, parents will take that back and take it to their own communities. And those peer-to-peer relationships are valuable, right? Like even as home visitors, and those of you in these different agencies on this call, you know that sometimes you get the most support by talking to somebody else in your field. It's no different for parents. We need those peer-to-peer relationships. And so giving us a table to sit at together so that we can develop and sustain those relationships makes all the difference. Myself, Sarah, and Monica, we bounce ideas off of each other all of the time. We support each other as we move through this work. And over the 7 years, all of us, we have a little trio families. It's ourselves, our husbands, and our sons. And we are able to juxtapose that part of life along with work together. And that is so much needed, especially in this time period. It's so much needed. There's so much going on in this world, so much going on with policy at the government level and above, that we need to have those containers at the bottom to help get us through each piece. So we wouldn't have that gift if not for the investment that was made into parent leadership for us. We have the gift of each other because of that. So next slide, please. So the last thing is sustainable financial investment and continued development of skills. So that's going to strengthen future outcomes beyond what you see today. It affects communities, our workforce, education systems, everything. Those of you who understand ACEs and have done work with that know that good quality early childhood intervention and programs will make a difference across generations. And it's the same with this. So when you find ways to keep families coming back for sustained periods of time, they will continue to grow, and each parent will take that and it'll bless their families and their children and their children's children and all of the community that they're surrounded with. So parents have barriers to participation at tables like this. They have to choose often between buying diapers or going to work or paying a sitter. So you must support their time. You have to support their transportation and their childcare, because we don't want them making decisions between these opportunities to move forward and develop as leaders and actually taking care of their families, right? So you have to be fully committed to that. You have to have that in the back of your head at all times. And funding will get tight, it always does, right? And so you have to realize that you are committed. I mean, I know that it gets tight for me as a person, right? I've seen growth in my own life when it gets tight, when I continue to invest in myself personally, because if there's no me, then that's the end. So you have to be committed to keeping these aspects in your budget so that no matter what happens with your funding, you are investing in these parents and taking care of these barriers for them. So you could do that by having a sustainability planning and process. Creating that sustainability plan with agencies around you ensures that this is valued, and if something happens, this continues on. So this funding ensures the work being done in homes in the home visiting programs, which do come to an end at some point, continues on. This is how you seal the deal of the legacy of home visiting. So you have a program and it's over in 2 years, then what? This is how you create the legacy, by investing in these spaces now so that it lives on beyond you and the time that that program was spent in the actual home. So I can prove that, because the work that my home visitor did with me 7.5 to 5 years ago is still living on, and she's not even a home visitor anymore. And that's what I mean by legacy. It's that powerful commitment with clever planning and processing that brought me to the space in front of you today that was invested years ago that helped me get to a different spot in my life. And I am affecting really 2 communities because, again, Detroit area is my home and love, and here in the Lansing community by the work that I'm doing. And so it makes all of the difference that you guys are committed to that aspect. So you want to do a lot of different thinking on how you can make things more accessible for parents and how maybe you can join forces to create even more dollars and resources and planning that can create an even greater impact. So Sarah did an amazing job, and so did Monica. They let us know about really how these lived experiences are going to be what makes advocacy in your community unique. Monica's story is proof Sarah is right, and I prove to you guys that I'm right about legacy. And that's the point. It's your parents and your communities that know what's going on and how to move the work forward, and they have to be at the table. I know you guys were blown away by some of the things that were shared. So like I said, we do have that resource, and I am monitoring the time. So I know that it is time to shift over to some question and answer. I do see some questions in the chat, but if you remember nothing at all whatsoever, just remember that what is unifying us here through these screens on Zoom is all about children. They're the future. They're the ones who will move us forward. And so because we're all unified, whether or not you have a child, take care of a child, love a child in your life, or are part of the home visiting system, it's our willingness to evaluate our practices. That is what's going to make the change and the difference. It's what's going to help balance out race equity work. When we evaluate our practices, see what we're doing right or could be doing better, and we bring parents into those tables because they're the ones who are the experts on their lives, and they can tell you that, and they can keep you connected, and programs will live on beyond what you see going on today. It's a domino effect. So we're going to move to question and answer time. I hope you guys maybe wrote down some questions for myself, Sarah, and Monica. Now is the time for that. I will say if you have any infrastructure questions, because I did notice a few of those in the chat, Bryn Fortune is the one. She's the one who can help you with that. So really you can just get to know me, Sarah, and Monica a little bit more. But if it's an infrastructure question, Bryn's got you. She'll take care of that. And like I said, there will be a slide where you can contact us and you will be able to get that document that I shared about earlier. That is a basic cheat sheet about everything I shared. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'm going to open it up for questions.
Bryn, did you want to take some of the questions or answer some of the questions that people put in about measurement of we're all with our grants and everything and our funding sources, how you measure engagement? And then I think there was another question, which I think the parent leaders certainly can talk about, to your experience in trying to weave through rules and bureaucracies, since we're not exactly set up to engage parents at this level about getting buy-in from state government, if that's where your program is and where this started. But Bryn, are you with us?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. So I actually put in the chat box, the way we measure is, so with our local leadership groups, which is the practice, I call it the practice arena for our parent leaders, we do site visits and we actually gather ahead of time their membership list and we review their meeting minutes because we want to see where the voice is present inside their meetings. Then each of our LLGs has to write an impact report, and in that, they have to identify what their group learned from the parent voice at the table, what is different about the work they implemented as a result of the parent input, and how has it rippled into the larger community. So for instance, Sarah is from Genesee, which is where Flint is located. And inside her community, the parent voice has been so effective at that local leadership group that many of the community organizations have turned to that group to say, we really want parents now involved in how we're approaching our work. And so you can begin to see the ripple of how it's impacting the community and growing in that way. They also had the ability to pull down some extra federal funds that was specifically about doing parent leadership development and training inside their own local community, and pulled down $75,000 of federal funding to do just that effort. So there's numbers of ripples and impacts. at this point, we're on a small enough scale. We can do it in this very, I think of it as a qualitative approach of measurement. And I'm quite sure when you scale large enough, you have to move into quantitative. I noticed in the chat box, and because I don't know if Sarah and Monica and Effie have had a chance to read the chat box, but I want you to know that some of the comments were about how wonderful and inspiring you were. And I'm quite sure most of the questions are going to be left to you.
So again, for Monica, you mentioned a little bit, and I think this is kind of from your perspective of working within a model when it was kind of pushing the boundaries of what the expectations were for staff. And even though you were staff, whether or not you were the right staff. So you want to talk a little bit about how that experience was for you in a little more detail, or you obviously had some important supporters within the organization, but we're working with state agencies and we're working with models. So how did you navigate that?
Well, so when I gave my shout out to Cynthia and Trish are our state team, are our state, they actually are the state for us. So Elaine, when I mentioned Elaine is my supervisor, so that's the program level. Cynthia and Trish are the state level. So because we already have a really great relationship with the state team, we can have a casual conversation with them about the different things of pushing boundaries. And I've been around, of course, now at this point, 7 years, because I came in pregnant. Well, maybe more than 7. So like they've gotten to know my personality because I was a part of the advisory board. I was a part of these things. So they've seen already things in me. And because my program manager and supervisor are a little more seasoned and typically probably plan to retire soon, their hopes are that I actually take over eventually. So you have to start pushing the boundaries now before that time comes up so that there isn't a hiccup when trying to hand the program over. So pushing the boundaries on the inside definitely does take some having advocates around the board. So not just on a local level, having advocates at the state level who also see what my program saw in me the same way so that we could all work together. So it's just having those casual conversations across the board.
Thank you, Monica. I think, again, the response about the buy-in from the state government, Bryn, you mentioned in your introduction that this was actually a contract with the Early Childhood Investment Corporation with the state of Michigan's home visiting program. So obviously, the state of Michigan had some commitment to parent involvement, we'll say. Maybe it grew larger than what they ever anticipated, but you want to talk a little bit about what the background of that in Michigan and why they invested in it?
Yeah, we were very blessed. One of the things we think about and strategize around is what we call champions inside and outside of our system. And the person in our state whose name was Nancy Peeler, who wrote our original MCV formula grant, was someone who went through a parent leadership program in Michigan that I happened to be the director of back in the early 90s. And it had a very profound impact on who she was. Obviously, she came with her own set of high quality credentials and moved into the system and was the person that was then responsible. She worked with, of course, a collaborative team, but wrote our original MCV grant. We built from some of the work that Michigan had done in building infrastructure around parent voice to align with that. And so it was a very small amount of money invested into our infrastructure. And it was really shepherded by what I think of as an internal champion inside of state government. But we actually use a very small amount of our infrastructure money available through our MCV formula grant that actually does the seed funding for all of this work.
Mm-hmm. Great. And as Effie said, they do such a good job. And if we're going to emulate that, it requires investment. And it's not just investment when we have the money. It's making sure that we have the money to prioritize that. Well, I just want to again echo on behalf of Anne and I and the rest of the Start Early community of practice how much we appreciate and value your comments and your willingness to be with us today. So hopefully it will spawn a lot of thinking about equity in a different way about how we do our program. So thank you all for that. Thank you so much. Here's the contact information I'll share. Just close us out with a few resources. Michigan just published, or the Early Childhood Investment Corporation, I should say, just published this wonderful resource, Stepping Up and Speaking Out. It is actually posted on our Community of Practice LinkedIn page, but there's also a link to this report, and it talks about Michigan's experience in setting up parent leadership. I also want to give a shout out to Lisa Fainer, who was our one of our guest speakers at our last presentation where we talked about civic engagement. Her PAT advocacy update for mid-October has a wonderful overview about, again, one of the things she talked about, ways to engage and support enfranchisement and voting among both parents and home visitors. And there's a wonderful video there. So if you haven't seen that advocacy update and the list of resources, Lisa, I'm sure could provide it to you. Next is, again, hooray, we have the 5 parts all completed of the Advocacy 101 series. Again, all of us are still, I think, working from home and sitting in front of computers, and hopefully this is a kind of a different way of providing information about advocacy training. And again, check out the Start Early YouTube channel for all 5 parts of the series, and we hope that it's a valuable tool for you to use with your staff and your volunteers and getting them up to speed on advocacy. And then last but not least, the registration is open for the National Home Visiting Virtual Summit in February, and you'll be hearing more about the advocacy piece of it. We're going to try to support your efforts and do some virtual advocacy visits. So we hope that you will continue to be engaged with us and check out our LinkedIn group and for the resources there, but stay tuned. And once again, I want to thank the parents, parent leaders, and Bryn and the rest of the staff from the Early Childhood Investment Corporation for a great, great webinar. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again soon, I hope.